Hello and welcome to Africa and Beyond the Television Network. And it's very interesting that we are looking at what is happening in the nation of Zimbabwe without fear, without a favor. And at this point in time, we need to look at what is happening in the political arena. President Nelson Chamisa came last year and said that there is no constitution to defend. Soon after his remarks, we saw a lot of opposition from the opposition, and they rushed to launch some things called "We are defending the Constitution," and they are doing it after 2 years of being quiet and being silent and not participating actively in the political discourse or the political arena to try and stop ZANU-PF machinations. They waited for President Nelson Chamisa to come back for them to also come back and revive their fortunes. But at this point in time, remember, they are fighting President Nelson Chamisa, trying to prove a point. But in this episode, we are going to talk about why it's almost impossible to defend the Constitution in a game which you are not a player. So we need to understand the wisdom of President Nelson Chamisa when he declared that there is no Constitution to defend. And rather he said, we need to fight for the liberation of Zimbabwe in its entirety. And after this, probably we are going to have a broader understanding of the young men. The young men understood one thing, that we have been doing things not in the absence of the Constitution, in its presence, but we are not able to access it, although we have rights to be accessing it. So if you are not given a right in the same Constitution to access it, to use it, then there is no Constitution to talk about. And I agree with him. We are going to deal with the points which I have put down right here. I want to give you an example. You are a tenant in a house. This is the situation of Zimbabwe. You are a tenant in a house, and then the house is locked, but there are no keys. And imagine that there is one family, you are both tenants, two families, you are both tenants in one house. And then the other part takes the keys and is controlling the gate, is controlling everything. And you and your children, despite the right you have to that house, you cannot access it, you cannot use its facilities, you can't do anything. You are not even allowed to do anything. I want to give you this example. We have parliament in Zimbabwe. And this parliament, numerically, is dominated by ZANU-PF. Procedurally, it's dominated by ZANU-PF because the procedures go through the Speaker of Parliament, who is ZANU-PF. Numerically, ZANU-PF does have two-thirds majority, which they got through bogus means, not through democratic means. What it means is whatever which they say in that parliament, it goes. So for someone to come and say, I want to defend the Constitution, how are you going to defend the Constitution? Because this Constitution is going to be amended in Parliament, passed in Parliament, and ascended into law by the president who is sitting at this point in time. So what kind of Constitution are you going to defend? How are you going to stop that from happening? It's almost impossible because it will happen, whether you like it or not. How are you talking about defending a Constitution when we have a Chief Justice who is presiding over the judiciary in Zimbabwe according to a twisted constitution which favored him, which favored his extension in office? There is a judge, a High Court judge, who declared the continuation of Justice Luke Malaba, null and void. What happened to that judge? They disregarded, they shredded the Constitution, as Advocate Nelson Chamisa said. So what kind of a Constitution are we trying to defend right here? The Constitution is in existence on paper, but do we have access to it? No, we don't. After you have fought or you have fought, you have done everything, you have cemented the opinion of ZANU-PF, what's next? That is something which we need to note. We are dealing with courts right here. The courts, they are captured, and the courts, they are from ZANU-PF. They are ZANU-PF entities. They are controlled by ZANU-PF. The security forces, they are answerable to ZANU-PF executive. That is the leadership of Emerson Mnangagwa. So what is going to happen is you are going to launch something and say, it's either you go to court, or whatever which you bring to court will be dismissed. After that, What you do as a second option is you get into the streets. The entire leadership will be arrested and will be locked up, and your team will be left with no leader. They will be denied, keys will be thrown away, and you stay there, languishing in prison for a very long time. We've seen it with Scala, we've seen it with so many people who have dared to oppose this ZANU-PF thing. So the only way out is to have the masses behind you. But for you to have the masses behind you, you must have an issue of legitimacy. You must deal with an issue of legitimacy right here. And when you are dealing with a matter which is before parliament, you don't have the legitimacy to challenge Emmerson Mnangagwa and these things, because they'll be doing things through parliament which you have recognized. So President Chamisa, when he says there is no constitution to defend, it's shredded, what he says is the government which is there is illegal. So when there is no constitution, anyone can do whatever he wants. This is what you need to understand. When a country does not have a constitution, it doesn't have a law. When a country doesn't have a law, yawada. That is the best interpretation of that. So what it means is that empowers President Nelson Chamisa to critically challenge ZANU-PF and its minions, and also to involve the regional bodies into the conflict, because he is taking this matter back, referring to how illegitimate this government is. So we will be facing only one thing. How do we solve the illegitimacy which is there? How do we resolve the constitutional crisis which we have, that we no longer have a functional constitution, it has been shredded? So you understand where President Nelson Chamisa is coming from. Let us talk about the referees. Let us talk about the police. The police will definitely not give you a green light to protest. They will simply write letters to you and say, if you dare go into the streets, we are going to arrest you. They will be using these laws which they brought to stop you. We saw it happening. President Nelson Chamisa was stopped severally to hold rallies in 2023 using the police. You will run to the courts. The courts will do the same. They will affirm the position of the police. You try to engage ZEC. ZEC will give you a deaf ear and will say, we are going to comply with the outcome of parliament. We will proceed with no elections in 2028. So let us meet in 2030, and we will be taking the directive from the executive. That is what ZEC is going to tell you. You go to the military, and the military will tell you that they've been appointed by the commander-in-chief, who is Emmerson Mnangagwa. He's their boss. They will salute him, and they will do nothing to deal with your issue, because they will say it's constitutional. It is happening within the constitution itself. So at the end of the day, you see that the referees, they'll be playing against you. They'll be playing on the side of ED and ZANU-PF. But let me give you another simple example. You are supposed to play a match, and you are barred to play in this match. So you are part of the match only in writing. When you get to the ground, you are not allowed to enter into the ground. The opponent gets into the ground and they start to play, and your team is not in the ground. Your team is not there. How do you expect to defend your goalposts when your team is not in the ground? It doesn't mean that what it means is the rules of the game have been violated. This is the situation which we have in Zimbabwe, where ZANU-PF is playing this on its own. They've deliberately pushed out the legitimate opposition from its trenches, and they've left them outside the stadium. That is the reason why President Nelson Chamisa is saying, how can we play a game when we are isolated politically and we cannot function? So it's very important to note that this is something which is very important. So what you have to expect is you'll be seeing goal after goal, and you won't be able to defend anything. So what we need to understand is we have ZANU-PF controlling the state media, controlling the public narrative, controlling the information flow. Information in Zimbabwe is flowing according to ZANU-PF. There are new laws right now, cyber laws, which are going to prohibit a lot of people from commenting and dealing with critical economic issues, especially when they are in Zimbabwe, because they will risk being arrested, prosecuted, and jailed. And the jail terms are from 2 years going up to 15 years or more. So when you're looking at all this, you can understand that that alone is going to hinder how information flows from point A to point B. Secondly, a lot of people will be labeled as terrorists using the same law, and they won't be able to be out of jail or to be out of prison. You see them being locked up for a very long time through the same shredded constitution which they want to defend. So what is happening is you will continue to have your rallies on WhatsApp, your rallies on YouTube, your rallies on Facebook. But is that going to change the narrative? No, because ZANU-PF will continue to do its own things, and it will continue to be recognized by SADC, will continue to be recognized by AU, by UN, and by everybody you can talk of, because they are going to respect the outcomes of the constitution you are talking about. The constitution you want to defend, they are going to use that constitution against you, United Nations, SADC, AU, and everywhere. What it means is Mnangagwa will continue to go to Davos, will continue to go to United Nations in September, will continue to represent Zimbabwe in each and every international forum, and will continue to be called the Mr. President, say. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Why? Is because you have recognized something which has been made invalid by the fact that it is not being followed. So when there is legitimacy, you have put legitimacy to these people. So who is working against the people right here? The same people who want to defend the constitution. So this is something which is very important and very clear. When you're looking at the constitution works only when amendments are rare. When the constitution, look at the period when Mnangagwa came into power versus 2013 up to the removal of Robert Mugabe. Compare the time frames, the number of amendments during the Robert Mugabe era versus the number of amendments during the Emmerson Mnangagwa era. If you compare and contrast, you'll be able to understand what we are talking about right here. Mnangagwa has amended the constitution so many times, more than Robert Mugabe in his time from 2013 to his removal in 2017. Mnangagwa is amending the constitution, without any hesitation, and they're likely going to do it again. They're about to do it again as we speak. They've planned to gazette the new amendments. So how are you going to defend the constitution which is going to be gazetted? The amendments are going to be gazetted, passed into law, and signed into law by Emmerson Mnangagwa. And your actions will be validating the same constitution which President Chamisa is saying it has been shredded. So the constitution works when the amendments are fewer. Number two, the constitution works when a violation carries consequences. This constitution of Zimbabwe was violated so many times. When elections were held, they didn't follow the constitution. That is a direct violation of the constitution itself. So what does it mean? When you are reading the constitution, it says, this is the supreme law. Any other law which is inconsistent with the constitution of the Republic of Zimbabwe is invalid. When you read the Electoral Act, it's inconsistent with the constitution. So when you are holding elections, you are illegally holding elections. There are no consequences about that. ZEC is told not to take sides. The police are not supposed to take sides. The military is not supposed to take sides. Then we continue to hear stories about the military, ZEC, the police taking sides, including the judiciary. They're both taking sides, and there is overwhelming evidence that they've taken sides with ZANU-PF. So how are you going to defend a constitution which is violated time and again and nothing happens? No consequences follow. So that is something which a lot of people should place in mind when you're dealing with this whole issue. What you need to understand is this constitution, they're dealing with it whatever which they want. They interpret it whatever way or whichever way they want. You can interpret it going to the left, they interpret it going to the right, they will never agree with you. I want to give you a clear example. In 2018, President Nelson Chamisa took ZANU-PF, ZEC to court and said, you didn't win this election. And Zimbabwe Electoral Commission manipulated the elections and he presented evidence. What happened? The captured judge, Chief Justice Luke Malaba, came and he delivered a different verdict. Despite the evidence, Justice Luke Malaba said there is no evidence whatsoever. He wanted his own kind of evidence. He didn't even apply the law of evidence. He didn't even apply the evidence which was brought before the court and which his ex-lawyer admitted in court. He disregarded all that. Why? It's because there are no consequences if you do not follow the constitution and you are in power. You are part of the ruling elite. So, there is something which is very important. You cannot defend the constitution when you fear about something invisible. Yes, you can't defend something when you fear about the invisible. Look at what happened to Pastor Messiah. Pastor Messiah's case, no arrest has been made, no proper investigations done. The matter has been swept under the carpet and everyone is quiet. Look at what happened to Itai Dzamara. If you are looking at Itai Dzamara, you are looking at Pastor Messiah, you are looking at Mboneni Ncube, you are looking at Tinashe Chitsunge, you need to understand that there is always fear about the invisible. So these people who are saying we are going to defend the constitution, they will do nothing whatsoever. Why? They will be in hiding, they will be doing their own things, without having much sincerity. So they will not go to the extent of forcing ZANU-PF to do things the proper way. But they'll be telling you, we are defending the constitution, yet in actual fact, they are enabling ZANU-PF to continue to be in power up until they want. The 2030 agenda, with this team Yana Chiruku defend the constitution, it will be a success. So, what you need to understand is, these are people who want to survive politically. So survival, naturally, it's about silence. They'll make noise, but they'll be silent about critical issues. We have seen it times without numbers. We have seen them trying to hide behind someone. If they plan something, they'll say, "Come, Chamisa, come and lead. Chamisa, come and endorse." What it means is they do not have confidence in whatever which they're doing. That is the reason why they're attacking President Nelson Chamisa instead of presenting their battles and their fights. They're attacking President Nelson Chamisa because they lack confidence in whatever which they're doing. They don't have confidence. I was talking to some people recently. They're saying, we don't have numbers. So, if you do not have numbers, you are not even confident that the people will follow you. You are not even confident that the people will follow your idea. How do you expect to then defend the constitution when you do not have the numbers, when you do not have confidence in yourself? So, it's something else. And also, we need to note that the opposition in Zimbabwe is not failing because there are no ideas, not because they are not courageous, not because there is something else which is a problem to them. No, they are failing because the battlefield is owned by ZANU-PF, controlled by ZANU-PF. It's fenced in favor of ZANU-PF. It's weaponized against the opponents. That is the reason why the opposition is failing in Zimbabwe. They have won elections so many times. If we are to say, let us dig deep and understand and investigate what happened in the elections, let us talk about since 2008 up to date, you will see that ZANU-PF is not supposed to be in power. You will see that ZANU-PF is not supposed to be anywhere near power. But they do everything and anything to make sure that they isolate the opposition using their own tactics, which are not consistent with the constitution. If we are to follow the constitution of the Republic of Zimbabwe today, you will see that ZANU-PF won't be in power. A lot of criminals will be in jail. A lot of people won't be even contest because they will be in exile, running away from Zimbabwe because of the crimes which they've committed. So what you need to understand is change in Zimbabwe will not come through court challenges. Change in Zimbabwe will not come through defending the constitution and legalizing it. It won't. What is going to happen is there is need for action. And that action is what President Nelson Chamisa is unpacking. That is what President Nelson Chamisa talked about. He talked about dealing with the past. He talked about curing what happened in 2023. What it means is, the first thing is to delegitimize the government in charge. When you delegitimize the government in charge, it stops to be recognized. When the government stops to be recognized, you go back to the drawing board and look at what are the causes of this illegitimacy. They failed to respect the constitution, they shredded the constitution, and the first question will be, how do we fix this? You will then start to deal with the constitution. You will bring back the constitution. Once you have brought back the constitution, you then deal with the irregularities, and you then deal with the issues of leadership, how to bring back leadership, how to make sure that there is leadership in the nation of Zimbabwe. So this thing of defending the constitution, what I can tell you is it's going to give us the same results. It's going to give us ZANU-PF. It's going to make ZANU-PF continue. It's going to save ZANU-PF, and it's going to make ZANU-PF survive. So it's up to the people of Zimbabwe to choose what they want. The continuation up to 2030 to infinity, or direct confrontation of ZANU-PF on important matters. And it starts by delegitimizing ZANU-PF. When you are defending the constitution, you are legitimizing ZANU-PF rule. You are legitimizing the government which is there and saying it's legitimate, it's there. And once you have legitimized that government, you no longer have the power to fight it, because when you fight it, you are now a criminal. You are now a wanted person. Ask yourself one question. Why is it that ZANU-PF does not want to respond to President Nelson Chamisa's issue on the constitution itself? He spoke about the shredded constitution and said, we no longer have it. Why is it they're quiet? It's because they know that what he said is the truth. ZANU-PF is always defensive. But ask yourself why ZANU-PF is not defensive on this one. If you ask yourself that, if you get an answer, then you understand what you're talking about. ZANU-PF knows what they've done. They know the criminal activities which they've conducted, and they know the consequences of their actions. And they know that if the people of Zimbabwe speak with one voice and understand and recognize that the constitution is no longer there, it has been shredded, then the legitimacy of ZANU-PF will evaporate, it will be washed away, and ZANU-PF will be faced with a lot of consequences. And one way out will be to deal with the issue of legitimacy and the issue of the constitution. So all these people we are talking about, they are the same people who aided ZANU-PF in 2023. They are the same people who aided ZANU-PF in 2018. In 2018, they supported, fielded, and promoted double candidates. They did the same in 2023 because they felt that they were supposed to be part and parcel of the election. But when they were defeated, they felt that they are being sidelined because they lost an internal process, an internal election, and they sold out. These are the same people who have worked left, right, and center to divide the opposition since 2005 up to date. These are the same people who have declared them the untouchables within the opposition, and they have declared Nelson Chamisa a toddler in politics. Why? It's because they are fighting their own survival battle. So it's up to the people of Zimbabwe to take it or leave it. So President Nelson Chamisa is a man who acknowledged his mistakes, who acknowledged what went wrong, and is a man who is determined to start correcting things and to make sure that Zimbabwe attains full independence and change comes for the better. So it's up to the Zimbabweans to choose what they want.